Well, God plays a creative role in every event. That it may be different from a notion of creation that has been more commonly formulated, because that's often a very externalistic notion, that God is here and brings something into being over here. And the way God creates is by participation in the process, for process thought. The distinction which some make so strongly between creation and redemption as two radically different ways in which God acts in the world is more merged. Of course, you can find biblical passages also in which new creation is a way of talking about redemption. So I don't think it's unbiblical to merge them, but that's not a theme that has been common in the tradition. So that what God calls each entity into being, but what that entity will be is partly determined by the way God calls it into being. It is very extensively determined by the whole world that has existed up until that moment, and it is partly determined by a decision that is made by the entity itself. So God, getting back to the problem of evil, God plays a significant role. Therefore, if you decide that the evil in the world overwhelms the good, you'd have to say, well, then God's work is evil. If you believe that despite all of the evil, that being is good, that it is good that we have life, there's so much more suffering when we have life, but somehow life is valuable enough so that to include suffering does not make it fundamentally evil, then God is certainly good. The role of God, of course, is something that differentiates this kind of process thinking from the Buddhists very sharply. And I think that we were saying we might not get back to the topic of how religions differ, but I think this may be a way we could talk about Christianity and Buddhism. For the Buddhists, the realization of how each event is the product of all the other events itself is profoundly liberative and transformative. And that is not a theme that one finds in the Bible, and it's only very peripheral within the Christian tradition. The biblical focus has been much more upon issues of righteousness and human responsibility, human freedom. At least a very important part of the work of God with human beings is calling us to righteousness. And that is something which we from the Western tradition who become process thinkers still find phenomenologically a very important part of our experience. I'm not saying it's absent to the experience of most Buddhists, but it hasn't been thematized in Buddhist discussion. So for us it's very important to say, based on phenomenology, but also all kinds of other reasons, that even though each occasion of human experience is informed profoundly by the inflowing of the past, that it does make a decision about just how it puts together that past and how it supplements that past. That means there is an element of transcendence in every event. It is not simply the product of the past. In other words, this is a radical rejection of the determinism of the past. How is it possible that there be something in the present occasion that doesn't come to it from the past? Much analytic philosophy doesn't think that's possible. And so we have hard and soft determinism as the answers from process point of view. We must also assert self-determinism. And the rejection of that, we doubt, can be fully consistently made, but these are where you get into the details of argumentation. I'll just make these as assertions. But we do agree that nothing comes from nothing. And therefore the introduction into an occasion of human experience of possibilities that are not derivative from the past, we attribute to God. So God's role in the occasion is to introduce transcendence, freedom, responsibility, a call to exercise that freedom in one way rather than another. And without this, finally, there would be nothing. I mean, so that apart from God, there would be nothing. In that sense, we could even say creatio ex nihilo. But we think the term is misleading because people associate something quite different with it. So we take God's creative activity very seriously, but not in the way that omnipotence thinking means that God simply decides exactly what's going to happen and then it happens.